Hello and welcome to Body and Mind Uncensored. We're your hosts, Kelly
and Celise. Combining 26 years of nursing experience, we're dedicated to sharing our expertise in mental health and women's health with as many people as possible.
Hello and welcome back to our podcast. Today, I would like to take some time and jump into where we kind of left off with your story, Talise, about your personal experience with bed rest and loss and all those things.
All things pregnancy.
Yes, all things pregnancy. Kind of how you felt during that time, what your support system looked like. Just kind of, there's so many people out in the world that are dealing with the same things, and just how did you cope and how did you deal with that, and maybe give somebody a positive outlook who might just be on bed rest right now and might be catching this podcast and wanting to learn all the things.
All the things about pregnancies gone wrong.
Yeah. And it's Maternal Mental Health Month, as we stated on our last podcast. And so really kind of diving into what that means, what resources are out there, kind of what to watch for, and symptoms. So with that said, let's
take it
jump
away.
on in. Let's do it.
Okay. So on our last episode, if you haven't listened to it, please go back and listen to both our introductory episode and our first episode. We're kind of excited about this. I gave a little bit of a segue into what my pregnancies were like. They were kind of horrific. Everybody has their own stories, but my own personal experience, in my opinion, wasn't the best. So I gave a little bit of background about my pregnancy history, that we lost our first one because I have an incompetent cervix. And that with the rest of those pregnancies, I did have to have what is called a cerclage, where they stitch up your cervix so that it can hold the weight of the baby as it grows throughout your pregnancy. After you find out you have that, they usually put the cerclage in around 12 weeks. They want to get you out of that first trimester. Did you ever have any patients? Did you take care of any patients, Kelly, with cerclages?
Oh, yes, a lot. We had several preterm labors, incompetent cervix, bulging bags of water, all those things. Yes, absolutely.
So hard.
So did you have a cerclage with each of your pregnancies then?
Yeah, the first one where I didn't know that my cervix wasn't going to be able to do its job, which I think is pretty common for people. You have no other reason to not trust it until you do find out that it's going to fail. But some people find out soon enough that they can reverse it for their first pregnancy. We didn't, however. But yes, with the other three that followed that first pregnancy, I had to have a cerclage, and that is what made my pregnancies so difficult. After they put that cerclage in at 12 weeks, you can't lift anything more than a gallon of milk. And so you'd be surprised it's like when you lose your phone or you leave your phone at home, all of a sudden you think of all the things that you can do, right? Like, oh my gosh, I couldn't vacuum. I couldn't pick up.
That's a plus, right?
Well, you'd think. And let me tell you, bed rest, I thought that sounds amazing. And even right now when I'm working, I'm thinking bed rest wouldn't be too bad. But if you ever lay in bed for like an entire day and think to yourself, no, I can only get up to go to the bathroom. Most times I had to have people bring me things.
Yeah, the hardest part was horrible. Just laying there feeling helpless, like you can't do anything. You can get up and go to the bathroom, and that's about it. It's pretty torturous for weeks on end, for sure.
Yeah. So my first one wasn't after, so I lost, we'll refer to her name is Savannah, my first one. So she was named, she does have a burial plot. So after Savannah, with our next pregnancy, we knew that this was going to be an issue. And so we were watching it closely. The cerclage went in at 12 weeks. After that, it was just like, I'm going to be completely open. You cannot have any sexual stimulation because that's going to make your cervix contract. It's going to make it move. And then that's going to make the stitch tear. That's going to make it. So you can't have like a shower with any stimulation from like the shower on your nipples, or you can't. It's just the strangest thing. And so it's hard on both, right? Like the person who is on bed rest, their support partner, their spouse, their boyfriend, whoever, girlfriend, whoever it is, it's hard on them. Yeah. So just laying in bed and being at everybody's mercy. And I'll tell you what the hardest thing is accepting help, right? Like we're all so proud. We just want to do everything ourselves. And that just can't happen when you
Yeah.
have to lay on your side. And something that you tend to forget when you're thinking bed rest sounds amazing. People waiting on me. I get to just lay here and do whatever you want. Most of the time, that's great if you have the option to get up when you want. But if your fear is that you're going to lose your baby or you're going to cause yourself to go into labor, you're afraid to turn over. So
Yeah.
it's just weeks and weeks of laying there hoping that you can keep your baby
Yeah.
healthy and whole.
Yeah.
And that's a mental game.
Definitely.
For sure.
Definitely. So when you were on bed rest, were you at home on bed rest or did they admit you to the hospital?
Nope, I was on bed rest. So my first Savannah, that one didn't go so well. The second one, Caden, my water ruptured, right? And when I was in bed, so
Yeah.
my cerclage was keeping its end of the deal. It was keeping up its one job. And then my water broke and Caden ended up in the NICU for a few weeks to be able to breathe and to eat. And that's another mental game, right? You don't have your baby coming home with you. So all of these things that we all suffer from, let's talk about them. Let's
Yeah.
be there for each other. They're pretty hard to deal with.
Yeah.
My
That's lucky
computers.
though that you were able to kind of stay at home, even though, I mean, not lucky, but you didn't have
Oh,
to stay in the hospital for those weeks. And that's the hardest part that I've seen
yes.
is those people who are weeks on end in the hospital and their support system is away because they have to continue to make money, they have to go to work, they have to take care of the kids and everything else while the person who's pregnant is stuck in the hospital on bed rest. And that was the hardest part that I've seen for a patient in my experience is just the helplessness of I'm not home. I'm stuck here in this hospital just waiting
Mm-hmm.
to find out if I'm what day I'm going to deliver my baby and trying to wait till that time. And I had one patient, well, I had several patients, but I had one patient who was there for very long time, extremely long time. And I just, every time I came on shift, I would have her and we got really close. And I would sit down and try to take my time and talk to her and check in on her and see how she was doing and how she was feeling
Yeah.
because really that's the only contact that she had except for when her family could come and visit every once in a while because they lived like an
Out of
hour,
state
hour and a half
sometimes.
away. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
we live in part of the country where we don't have big cities all around us. And so there's a lot of rural communities. And
yeah.
you're right. Like families have to go back and they have to work and they have to keep things running with if you've got kids at home. Yeah, thank goodness I never had to spend any time in the hospital. But I can't even imagine that, adding that to that
Yeah.
situation.
But it's still hard no matter where you're at
No
on
matter
bed rest.
what. We
Yeah.
all, when we get pregnant, we have this dream, this ideal of what it's going to look like. And you start getting excited and you think about what the baby's nursery is going to be and what this
Yeah.
is how I want my delivery to go. And this is what I expect. And I'm going to have my bag ready. I'm going to have everything just organized so it's super smooth. And then something goes wrong or something changes. And we need to be able to adjust to that, right? Like
Yeah.
we
Well,
need to be
and
able to
that's
be like,
another thing. Like I
okay,
didn't even think about getting the nursery ready, going and shopping for your baby. Like if you're on
yeah,
bed rest, you can't do
you
those things.
can't.
So you are totally dependent on somebody else to go and pick out all the things and get the nursery ready and wow, I just that would be so hard.
But I will tell you, Kelly, it really puts things in perspective. Those fun things that we get excited about when we're pregnant, as soon as you're on bed rest and it's basically you doing the best that you can to prolong the delivery, all of those things kind of do leave your mind. It's still
Yeah.
like a loss, right? You're mourning the loss of being able to get ready for this baby that you're excited about and letting others do it. And maybe it looks like you've got a baby shower while you're on bed rest. We unfortunately that does have to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just I get it, like,
Things that you just don't think about
expectations.
unless they happen to you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm sure there's a million stories of pregnancies gone wrong, births gone wrong. That's actually the exception to the rule, right? Is that people
Yeah.
can have exactly what kind of birth that they want,
Yeah.
their birth plan. Did you have a birth
Yeah.
plan or labor plan?
I
I don't
did
even know what they're called.
I did not. I just knew that I wanted to have a baby.
Yeah.
And in the
It's
safest
going
way
to come out
possible.
some way.
It's gotta come out. I just wanted it to be a safe delivery and safe for me and the end result to have a baby. So, no, I did not have a birth plan, and I didn't even know about birth plans until I became a nurse on labor and delivery and realized that people came in with really elaborate birth plans and they would stick to those, and I think that's a whole
I would
other
love to hear that.
topic.
I would love to
Yeah.
hear these birth plans because, like you, I didn't know what a birth plan was. My plan was I'm going to get pregnant and I'm going to have a baby and I'm going to be a mom.
Yeah.
That's my plan.
Yeah. Birth plans can get a little crazy. So
Is
that
it
could be a
like
whole
music?
topic just in and of
Yeah.
itself.
We'll
Yeah.
revisit that.
Yeah, we can
Okay.
revisit that one. That would
I
be
would love
yeah.
to.
That would be an
I'd love to
interesting
hear
topic.
everybody's birth plans out there. Like
Yeah.
those would be fun to share. Like what music you wanted to listen to. I'm just kind of winging it here as far as what I think a birth plan would include. And my perfect birth plan, I would want to have music, right? I would want it to be like a party,
Yeah.
like there to be some snacks for the people that are waiting, because I can only have
Well,
ice chips.
not only that, but how many birth plans went according to plan? Because in
Oh,
my
0.
experience, those
None.
birth plans did not necessarily go as planned.
And
So yes, I would love to hear the birth
all the
plans
birth
and
plans.
if it was a realistic expectation or not.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go
And
back to your bed rest because
okay.
I have so many questions for you. So you said one of the biggest things for you was just trying to accept help. So what
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of help did you have? I mean, your first pregnancy, clearly you didn't have other children to take care of, but after
Mhm.
you had Caden
Mhm.
and your other pregnancies when you have small children, that's got to be even harder to try
It
to.
was so sad. I feel like I missed out on an important part of his life. We decided to have our 2 children pretty close together, and which was hindsight probably not the best way to do things, but I don't regret it at all, and I love how close my boys are. But that was tricky. That was tricky to have a toddler and to also be pregnant. And my 3rd child, Britton, he was the one that I was on bed rest for the longest, for 10 to 12 weeks. It was just in between there. And that was one of the most challenging things in my life, was to know that I had this toddler that needed me. I was so fortunate to be a stay-at-home mom. I think I probably would have had to have taken some FMLA, some leave, if I
Yeah.
were working and had to be on bed rest. So I was very fortunate that way. But I will tell you, as soon as you lay there for a few hours and you can't sit up and you can't lay on your back, because we all know that that puts pressure on your circulatory system and it's not good. So I had the options of my left side or my right side and pillows propped up. But then my hips started to hurt. And so I had to change more often. You get up to take a shower and you just feel this pressure in your pelvis and
Mm.
you swear things are changing, right? Because you can
Yeah.
feel that you've been on your side for so long that all of a sudden this new pressure is scary and just kind of like a PTSD of, oh my goodness, am I going into labor? Is this the start? Is this, have I, by getting up and showering, if I created myself to go into labor, it's a mental and a physical game for sure.
Yeah.
And times are different now. I didn't even have Hulu, Netflix, cable. I didn't have any TV to
Oh,
watch.
yeah. That would be so hard to. Yeah. What did
It
you do all day
was, I
long?
read, I read, I read and read and
How
read.
many books did you get through?
I got through. So there's a series, and it had 12 books in it, and they're thick books, and I read one a week, and that was what saved me, was just reading these stories of people who are out living their lives, and I knew this was temporary. I had to keep that in the back of my mind. I'm going to be able to deliver a baby, hopefully, and go on with my life and get out of this bed. But that was a real hard thing, was my mental health. And so I would every day start this day with just thoughts of what my goal is. My goal is to keep this baby healthy. My goal is to, myself, I needed to keep as comfortable as I could so that I wasn't in pain. Pain causes extra stress on a baby who's trying to develop and grow. And also still kind of keep a relationship with my husband and my toddler, who
Yeah.
could just visit me in bed. It was
Yeah.
a really trying time.
That would be so hard. And to do it over and over, like, I
Mhm.
mean, you 4 pregnancies total. And it's interesting to me that you mentioned PTSD because recently I learned at the Women's Health Conference that I attended that PTSD is something that you can have with pregnancy.
Mhm.
And I never really thought about it that way. You think PTSD, oh, that's somebody who was in the military and they went to war and they
Exactly.
saw these things. But PTSD can affect so many people and definitely in pregnancy, especially dealing with loss. And so some of the symptoms of PTSD, you start to have intrusive memories. So going back and reliving those traumatic events, like, they were
Mhm.
happening again. Did you have
Oh,
those kinds of
absolutely.
thoughts? It sounds
Yep.
like it. Like you said,
Right,
when you
like
were in the
getting up.
shower and
Mhm.
yeah,
You feel those changes and those changes that I felt when I was losing my first child.
yeah,
Any little twinge, anything that reminded me of that first pregnancy, for sure, I was like, "Oh, this is it. Here we go again."
yeah,
And it does, it traumatizes you. Anything that's traumatic, you can have a PTSD experience. Anything can bring that back and trigger it. And absolutely, even just the baby moving in my stomach, I just think, stay still, don't move. We're trying to
yeah.
keep you in there. And so that was even traumatic to feel the baby move. And yeah, it's hard.
I'm sure one thing too, everybody says, "Oh, I get so attached," and I felt this way. Like I was so attached to my child when I was pregnant, but is it hard to feel like if I get attached to this
Mm.
baby and I lose that baby, like that would be a really hard thing too, which is also associated with PTSD. Did you
Mhm.
have feelings like that too?
Yeah, absolutely. After losing my first one, you kind of put up that wall when you keep things at arm's length, and if it's possible it's going to happen again, you certainly don't want to set yourself up for that pain, that incredible pain of losing a child. And so yeah, you don't want to fantasize about raising this child or about what things are going to be like because you aren't 100% sure that this is going to be a viable birth. And fortunately, it did. I was able to
Yeah,
have viable births after that first one, but you're certainly hesitant to become just all in and this is wonderful because you wait for the next shoe to drop.
yeah.
Fortunately, after each cerclage, my cervix did start to develop some scar tissue, and so with each one, it did get a little bit stronger. I didn't have a million kids,
That's
but
good.
with my last one, they took, let me back up just a little bit. So they leave the cerclage in, and then when you get about a month before you're due, 3 weeks before you're due, they know the baby's healthy, the lungs are developed. Then they'll take the stitch out. And some people just immediately dilate. With my first cerclage, I dilated immediately to 5 or 6.
Wow.
And with my last one, it took a little bit longer just because of that scar tissue. So they removed it at 3 weeks. And then I did go into labor a couple days after that. But I want to go back to the bed rest and just recognizing signs and symptoms that maybe are depression or anxiety. And I would find myself getting in these thought patterns, not wanting to think this is going to be a positive ending and just trying to prepare myself for the worst of,
Yeah.
okay, if he's born now, maybe he'll just have to stay in the hospital for a few weeks. Or if he doesn't come home, at least he will have lived. And you just walk yourself through these scenarios. And all the while, I'm creating this anxiety for myself. My blood
Yeah.
pressure's rising, my heart's racing, which is not good for a
Yeah.
fetus trying to survive. So you really have to watch those. What signs and symptoms did you see of patients in the hospital? Because when they first come in there, they don't have any idea they're going to be there for weeks. And
Yeah.
they start out positive, maybe scared.
Yeah, definitely. Very scared, very just the unknown, especially first time pregnancies, just really hard time sleeping.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it
hard
just,
when you're pregnant, regardless, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Sleeping is hard
Yep.
when you're pregnant,
Yeah.
but in a hospital bed
Yeah.
for a good chunk of your pregnancy, holy
Yeah.
moly.
Yeah. Definitely the blame game. Like they blamed
Mm-hmm.
themselves. What did I do wrong? What
What
could
could
I
I
have
have done
done to prevent
differently?
this? Yep. Just scared, worry, all those things. Anxiety, like major anxiety. So when you're in the hospital and you're feeling that way, you have people around you that you can kind of talk through those symptoms and
Well,
maybe
and
get
we're
help. But when
asking those
you're,
questions, right? As nurses,
yeah,
that's part of our
yeah.
assessment is we're
So,
asking.
so how did you cope mentally with those thoughts, especially the PTSD thoughts, the anxiety, the depression? Did you talk to somebody about that, or was it just something that you kind of dealt with? Because back then,
Mhm.
people didn't talk about those things, right?
No. No, they didn't. It yeah, I don't know if it was just there wasn't social media, so there weren't the platforms that people could find other people in situations.
Yeah.
That's a real big help these days.
Yeah.
And so, no, I really didn't. I had my support, my spouse and his parents. Other than that, my parents were great. They live in Idaho, and they would come and they would get when I was on bed rest for the longest, they would come and get my toddler and they would take him for a couple of weeks. And that was hard being away from my child, but it would also relieve the stress of him needing my attention and needing somebody who could just be there for him to lift him up out of his crib. Because you think about anything more than a gallon of milk not being able to pick it up, that's definitely your
Yeah.
child. They're in their crib. They need to get in there for a nap and they need to get back out. And if they're potty training and they need to get into car seats, and I could go on. And I think everybody has a good idea of what toddlers need, but support system wasn't strong. So it was just me in bed being vulnerable with myself, trying
Yeah.
to one day at a time. And that's
Yeah.
really all I could do was focus on the day in front of me. If tomorrow was different, then we'll deal with that. But today we're going to deal with today.
Yeah.
And I would get sad and I would get lonely because my husband didn't work at home. He was gone. And I did feel alone a lot of the time. So I think looking back on it, I would suggest have your routine. That was a really hard thing for me was I thrive in routine situations. And as soon as that was ripped out from under me, there was nothing that was certain.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I was going to be pregnant the next morning. I didn't know if I was going to be in pain. And just to be able to wake up and be grateful that I was able to have another day behind us, just put my attention on those things, that the milestones that we reached. Me and my
Yeah.
baby
Yeah.
together. We've
Yeah.
made it.
Oh, sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
go ahead.
It's so hard. And thinking back when we had babies, it was such a different time. People didn't talk about these things and people didn't know what to watch for. And it was so easy just to feel alone. I remember just feeling alone after I had. And yeah, it's so easy to get into your own head. And I really love where we're at now with recognizing these mental health issues that people are having and putting a name to them and saying, hey, there's a way for you to get through this. There's help.
I hope I am not remembering incorrectly, but I don't even think mental health was a question that was asked when
No,
we had babies. It
that I
was more of a
remember.
pain scale, right? Like,
Yeah.
how's your pain?
Yep.
And of course, it's like, oh my gosh, I've had an episiotomy, so that hurts. I'm trying to breastfeed, those hurt.
Yeah.
I'm sad because now all my hormones are just completely
Yeah.
doing whatever the hell they want to do. And there wasn't a mental health of how are you doing?
Yeah.
Are you happy? Are you feeling sad? That is such a turning point for healthcare, maternal health. Of this isn't just a physical outcome here. We're going to mentally also check in with our mothers and our partners. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's
It
fantastic
definitely, I
progress.
don't remember the questions ever.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely focused on how's your baby growing? How are the basic things? There was never any discussion about mental health. So yeah, definitely the times have changed and I'm happy for that
Thank
because
goodness.
yes, I've seen so many things happen over the years. But even with that said, the number one cause of death in women is suicide after they
For real.
after they have a pregnancy. That's
Oh,
the
that's
number one cause of
sad.
death. Even still,
Wow.
as much as there's a focus on these issues, that is still the number one cause of death in
And that's
new
preventable,
parents.
right? These
Yeah.
are most of them reasons that if they could have some help, have some
Yep.
support
Yeah.
that we could get through that.
Yep.
Oh,
Just
that's sad.
recognizing those symptoms. So, yes, all those things that we've talked about, if you or somebody that you know are feeling that way, definitely get help. There's help out there. The stigma, we need to get over it. We need
We need to
to
talk about it.
we need to
Put it
talk
out
about
there.
it. We need to say I need help. You're not alone.
No.
I have talked to so many women over the years that have told me the same kinds of stories about how they felt, and we need to talk about it. We need to get it out there because we can save people if we do.
I did not know that that was the number one cause of death. That is frightening.
Yeah. It
It's
is
frightening.
Very frightening.
So, talking about signs and symptoms of depression and anxiety, and we all know like good diet, good exercise, sleep, we can all give those answers, but truly sleep. Am I right?
Yes,
We can
but you
all
don't want to
survive on
sleep too
cake and
much.
sleep. Cake and sleep.
But it's easy when you're depressed to sleep.
Oh, yeah.
It can
A
you can
balance.
either not sleep or
Mhm.
you can oversleep. And I think,
Neither healthy.
yeah, neither of them are healthy. So finding a good balance, I think, is
Absolutely.
important. And yeah,
So
yeah,
recognize those signs, right? If you're not sleeping because your mind's racing, that's a sign. Get some
yeah,
help. Talk to somebody. If you're sleeping too much because you can't face what your day looks like or what your life looks like, let's get some help.
yeah.
Reach out to anybody that you can.
Your
Your
partner, your
doctor.
best
Tell
friend.
somebody.
Yeah, anybody.
Tell somebody.
Yep.
Absolutely. I do appreciate social media for that reason. There are so many support groups. You could put on your social media feed, anybody have help for a baby that won't sleep or a baby that cries, and you're going to get responses. Something that we need to talk about is frustration with newborn babies.
Mm-hmm.
You're tired. The baby is trying to figure themselves out in this new world. And together, that can lead to thoughts of hurting ourselves, hurting our children, our babies. And that's what we want to try and avoid and
Yeah,
try to provide support for is each other and avoid those
yeah,
situations.
yeah. That is
Right.
one of the hardest things, especially if your baby's crying all the time and you're just exhausted. What do you do? I,
Mm-hmm.
from our last podcast, I didn't really have much help, so I just kind of dealt with it. But what kinds of things do people do when they're feeling overwhelmed with a new baby? What did you do?
I wish I could go back and do it differently because I think I would have spent a lot less time worrying about a crying baby. A crying
Yeah.
baby, if you know they're fed, their diapers changed, and they're comfortable, sometimes can just be a crying baby trying to figure out their world. And I was one of those moms that I was like, I'm not going to let my baby cry. I feel bad. I want to just pick them up. And I did. I didn't get all the showers that I should have taken. I didn't eat all the meals that I should have done or slept because I was more focused on doing that. And it's just like the oxygen in the airplane. You've got to take care of yourself before you can take care of anybody else. And if that baby needs to sit in a safe place and cry while you take a shower, while you gain your composure and reach out for support, that's fine. If that baby's in a safe place, that's better than us being frustrated and wanting to hurt
Yeah.
anybody or anything. So,
Nobody
yeah.
intentionally ever wants to hurt themselves or their
No,
child, right?
right.
It's
No,
hard.
we just get to a point where you don't know what else to do. You know,
Yeah.
we've all been there, whether it be with kids on the freeway, with our loved ones. We get to the point where we can't take anything more. And we just need to make sure people are safe and step away and be okay with that.
Yeah.
So, Kelly, a little bit about you mentioned the nursing aspect and on the floor. So, thankfully, we are now talking more about the mental health of mothers, postpartum depression with mothers and their
Yes.
partners. Yeah, because it's not just for women. It's not just for mothers, right?
Yeah.
We're looking more at the family now.
Yep. Yeah, because fathers, other support people, anybody who's taking care of an infant can have those same feelings. It can be very stressful. Guardian. Yeah. It doesn't have to be the person who birthed the child, for sure.
To have postpartum depression.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Especially
That's
if
come a
there's a
long way.
traumatic event around it. If your child's
Hmm.
in the NICU, a loss, things like that. It doesn't have to be a
It can
thriving
come,
child.
yeah.
It could come from any kind of experience that you're having. So whether it's a normal pregnancy, normal birth, normal everything, or a traumatic one, anybody who's
Hmm.
involved in that life can have these same thoughts.
Yeah, even if it's because this is a life-changing event, right?
Yeah.
This is something that is life-changing. And
Yeah.
even if it goes perfectly how you thought it should, how you wanted it to, you could still feel those yucky feelings. You could not be
Yeah.
happy, but every reason says you should be,
Yeah.
but you're not. And that's
Yeah.
okay. And that's where we need to recognize that you're not alone. Even if everything's perfect and you feel sad, that's normal.
Yeah.
That happens. And
Yep.
if you get to the point where it's not safe anymore, that's when we need to recognize within ourselves or listen to others. Sometimes we think, oh, I'm just sad. I'll be okay. But we need to listen to our loved ones who know us and who can see a difference. And we don't want to white knuckle through this. There's no reason. There's enough help out there that we can accept help and we can feel better. And a happy mom, happy family, that's what we need for our babies and for
Yeah.
our families.
Yeah, absolutely. If you ever got to the point of you felt like, I just can't do this, I know that in Utah, we have the Utah Newborn Safe Haven Law, which basically says that you can give up custody of your newborn to any hospital, no
No
questions
questions
asked.
asked, right?
But I don't know what other states, if we have people listening in other states, what kind of supports do they have? Do they have those same kinds of laws? You know,
Yeah, I
it's,
don't think we're alone here in Utah. I think that hospitals, fire stations, every fire station I drive by now, I look for the sign and it says safe place. And I was reading about that, what that sign meant. And I've always thought it was like a safe place to bring a baby. If you wanted to give the
yeah,
baby up for adoption, no questions asked, you were going to hurt the baby, whatever the case may be. But I read about it and it was what I read was about teens if they felt like they were going to do something they shouldn't. But
hmm,
I'm confident that if you were to take your baby to a fire station, to a hospital, to a trusted environment, that it would be a safe place.
yeah,
And hopefully that's what other states do.
I hope so. Yeah.
Like,
So, yeah, this has been hopefully not like super heavy podcast. We don't want things to be super heavy, but we definitely want to talk through those thoughts and feelings and what's normal and normalizing um and what people go through during and after pregnancy. So hopefully this wasn't too heavy of a podcast, but I do want to take a moment and end on a positive note so that we're not going away thinking, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, the world is ending, because at the end of the day, we make it through it. We all have these experiences, but at the end of the day, it's what that joy and what you
finding the
get.
joy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
finding the joy in your experience.
So something that resonated with me when I was going over what we were going to be discussing today is bed rest and not being able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, of course, you're like, okay, yeah, we've got a timer on this, obviously, but when you're looking at weeks and months of no change, it's pretty hard to keep going. And so this is a quote that kind of sums it up, and it's called "One Day at a Time." This is enough. Do not look back and grieve over the past, for it is gone. And do not be troubled about the future, for it is not yet come. Live in the present and make it so beautiful it will be worth remembering. And I love that because,
I love that.
one day at a time. And if today sucks and yesterday was great, remember that. Like, okay, that was great. Today will pass, and just one day at a time. And pretty
Yeah.
soon you have weeks behind you and years behind you. And
Yeah. I love
it's just,
that. Tomorrow's a new day.
mm-hmm.
Have
No matter
have
what's
a
happened.
yeah. Yeah.
Well,
You
thanks.
can't redo what you've already done, but we're here and we're moving
Exactly.
forward. I love that. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Kelly.
Well, That's it for another podcast. Thank you so much for listening in, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye, everybody.
If you or someone you know has thoughts of hurting themselves or others, please text or call 988. They will direct you to someone in your community that can help. You can also call 911 in an emergency.
Remember, you never know what someone else is going through. Sending peace and love to all. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook.